To anyone who listens to the many podcasts that I appear on will know that I've been saying for some time really that I think it would be silly to rule out the possibility of Liverpool dipping into the January market. And the reason I've been saying that is you just think about the sheer success that they've had in this market in recent years. I mean, the most recent example, of course, is Cody Gakpo, but you think about the signing of Luis Diaz, Virgil van Dijk all those years ago. You could go even further back and think about the signing of Luis Suarez. So as I say, I think it would be silly to come into this window saying that you think that Liverpool are going to have a quiet window or not too much expected, because they've shown consistently they're ready to dip into this market, even if it is described by so many other clubs as a more difficult window than the summer one. So not really that surprised, to be honest, that a huge link to a very, very good player has popped up now. And of course I'm talking about the Napoli winger Khvicha Kvaratskhelia, which is not the easiest name to say, but I think we can all agree that he's an absolutely fantastic player. Now, the news that Liverpool are monitoring this situation was broken by the fantastic David Ornstein at The Athletic, and he absolutely doesn't need me to be backing up his stories. But what I can say is throw my personal weight behind it and say that it is very much also my understanding that Liverpool are monitoring this situation. I think it's becoming clear now that Napoli are closer than they have been at any point over the last few years to potentially sanctioning a sale, and that for me really is a perfect example really of an opportunistic signing potentially popping up for Liverpool. We know Richard Hughes, the sporting director, used that phrasing, didn't he, at his unveiling at that press conference that Liverpool want to be opportunistic in this market. And I think this is a really, really good example of where they could be, isn't it? A player who they've liked for a while, potentially coming on the market. They want to be ready to move and they want to be agile. And so this could be a situation where we see that opportunism coming into play. Now, I spoke to a source at Liverpool yesterday, and the way they put it to me really was that a lot needs to happen for this deal to come together. There are quite a few moving parts. Obviously the fact that other clubs are interested is one of those, but this is very much a player that Liverpool absolutely like. I mean, he fits the profile perfectly, doesn't he? I mean, he's 23 years old, so he's on the kind of brink of where you would expect his peak years to be. He's scored a lot of goals at a high level, not just Serie A, but also the Champions League. He's won trophies, so he knows what that's all about. So a lot to like about the player. And the fact is, even though, as I say, a lot needs to come together, I think that the bottom line of what was said to me is that if there is an opportunity there, then Liverpool want to be all over it, because this is a player they've liked for some time. And it does seem that opportunity is about to arise, because we know and we've seen the reports that Paris Saint-Germain is sniffing around the player. They are actually engaged in talks with Napoli at the moment. Now, those talks would not be ongoing if Napoli were taking the stance that they absolutely don't want to sell the player. So I think that shows, and it gives encouragement to other clubs that are out there. I mean, it may come as a little bit of a surprise, actually, that Napoli are willing to engage in those talks. I mean, you look at the Serie A table, they're right at the top of it, so they're right in the middle of a really tight title race. So why would they want to sell someone who is arguably their best player at the moment? But I think the obvious thing here is the contract situation. Now, Kvaratskhelia, is out of contract in 2027, which of course means that he's got 2.5 years left now. Obviously, if he's not going to sign a new contract, then you're probably going to have to sell him in the summer. And if not in the summer and you want to get ahead of that problem, maybe you have to sell him now. We've seen clubs get into this situation where you get to that kind of 2.5 years left, and that's the period in which you really want to sell the player, or you feel like you have to do it. So maybe Napoli have got that themselves in that situation where they feel that over the next 2 windows they're going to have to sell the player, and therefore reluctantly they're willing to enter talks about him in this January window. So I suppose the big question is, what kind of happens now? What will we see from Liverpool? How will this situation progress? And I will say that Liverpool aren't in talks with Napoli at the moment. It's very much Paris Saint-Germain who are taking the lead on that. Now, in terms of how those talks are progressing, we've seen reports that PSG are willing to offer around 45 million euros, or that's certainly their initial offer, and Napoli are maybe leaning towards wanting something more along the lines of 80 million euros. So there's a big gap there in terms of valuation, a long way for those talks to go before they get anywhere solid really, or any progress is really made. And you get very much the sense really that basically Liverpool are kind of waiting in the wings, seeing what happens, seeing how that progresses, because this is something they've done before. This is an approach we've seen them take previously. I mean, I remember back when Luis Diaz joined Liverpool in the January window that Actually, Tottenham went as far as agreeing a fee with Porto before Liverpool pounced. And again, basically, I think what they did in that situation, and I think this is maybe the similar approach they'll take this time around, is allowed Spurs to do all the kind of legwork really before kind of diving in and making their move. So allowing Spurs to find out what the fee that Porto would agree in that case, and then being ready to make a move. So, I think it's going to kind of be a similar approach here, is find out what it would take for the Napoli to sanction a sale, and then dive in and say, okay, we will match that fee. And then obviously the conversation is about convincing the player that Liverpool would be the best destination for him. And I think in terms of being able to do that, they've got a lot on the side, haven't they? Obviously, the Premier League is a far better league than Ligue 1. I think Liverpool, you would say they were a better bet to go and win the biggest honours in the coming seasons. For example, the Champions League. I just think PSG look further away from winning the Champions League than they have for a long time, really, in recent years. They're taking a very different approach to how they build their team and do that. So I think Liverpool are a much better bet for that kind of thing. And the Premier League is just the biggest league in the world. It's the best paying league in the world. It's the one that has the most eyes on it. It's the one where if you want to test yourself as a player, it's much, much more appealing. So I think you've got to throw all that in and say that Liverpool have got a really, really strong case there. You'd also say, of course, Chelsea are also said to be monitoring the situation, so that also helps them. But again, Liverpool look a much better prospect, don't they, for winning trophies than Chelsea do, as they're building things with a kind of young side. And also, one other thing to mention that is in Liverpool's favour, I would say, they have, of course, signed Mamardashvili, who is also Georgian. They played together on the national team. They came through the same academy as well years ago. So, I'm sure they'll know each other really, really well. So I think Liverpool got quite a few things on their side in terms of convincing the play. But we are still a little bit away from that. Of course, as I say, maybe PSG need to agree a fee so that Liverpool then know what they're aiming for and they can come in and have those talks. But it is certainly interesting times ahead, and we'll see how that one progresses. And I think one final question I kind of want to address on this is a little bit of the why. Now, Liverpool are so well stocked, aren't they, in attack? 6 frontline attackers. They're ready really to sell Ben Doak this window because they know there's no opportunities going to arise for him over the next kind of couple of seasons because they're so well stocked in that area. So why are they signing another frontline attacker? And I'd say, really, I think it's kind of, I mentioned Mamardashvili there and the fact that they've signed a goalkeeper when they don't necessarily need one. I think all the windows at the moment are all about kind of planning and getting ahead and taking opportunities to make sure that you're never in a situation where you're short of very good players. And there's a few question marks over players in the squad at the moment, particularly in those attacking positions, that I think need to kind of be resolved and which, to me, kind of explain why they would maybe be looking at another forward who, by the way, can play left and right, so there's the options there. But I think they know that there are question marks. I think a couple of those is that by the end of this season, both Luis Diaz and Diogo Jota are going to be 2 years out from the end of the contracts. Are Liverpool going to offer new ones? With Luis Diaz, there's that Barca interest from Spain, generally speaking. Is that something he would want to explore? With Diogo Jota, the question marks are, of course, over his kind of fitness record and whether Liverpool can rely on him. So I think that is there. There's also, of course, the Darwin Núñez question where, for me, and this is not something where I will say it's my understanding, but it's very much my kind of personal feel and reading around the situation, is I would not be shocked at all if he were to be sold this summer. For me, I expect this is kind of his last 6 months at the club, to be honest, because it kind of hasn't worked out. So I think he's a real candidate for a sale. So again, that would open up a place in the forward line. And I also say one to really keep an eye on, maybe even in this window, is Federico Chiesa. I think it clearly hasn't worked out so far. He's struggling with the physicality of the league, and we keep seeing links to Napoli popping up, and it just makes me think, if he's a player that Napoli would want to replace Khvicha Kvaratskhelia, then surely there's some deal to be done there, and Liverpool could make that happen. Obviously, a lot depends on Chiesa and whether he is willing to make that move, and whether Liverpool themselves have decided it's just not going to work for him here. There are a few moving parts on that one, and it's not something I would say I'm certain on, but I just say it's something to keep an eye on, and maybe opens up a place in the squad that Liverpool could then fill. So we'll just kind of keep an eye on that one and see how it plays out. But very exciting news, I think, and really interesting stuff to play out over the remainder of this January window. Now, one more topic I want to kind of address before I wrap this one up. I don't get to do these transfer updates very often, so just want to go into the talk around Harvey Elliott at the moment. Now, you will have seen the reports yesterday about the potential for the clubs that are monitoring his situation at the moment. Brighton, one of them, Borussia Dortmund, another. Now, I've spoken to a couple of people, both club side and player side, about this to kind of get some insight into what's happening there and whether the potential for a move will be happening. And I think from the club side, they really acknowledge that, look, it's been a frustrating season for Harvey Elliott so far. He had a poorly timed injury, didn't he? Picked up on international duty, and he's not really been able to pick up the minutes since then. But they will say that basically, look, Arne Slot only really uses players, doesn't he, when he's convinced they're absolutely 100% fit. You look at how long it's taken Diogo Jota to get back into the starting 11. So it's all about, there's big competition for starting places. Those opportunities will come up, and there's still a real belief club side that Harvey Elliott's got a big part to play, not just across the remainder of this season, but across a whole career at Liverpool, because he is extremely highly rated, and they do acknowledge that it's been a frustrating time for him, but there's still that expectation that he can come good and really force his way back into consideration over the remainder of this season, and really hope that he can do that. I mean, he will, I expect, get a start against Accrington at the weekend, which hopefully will be a step towards seeing him a little bit more. And I also spoke to kind of sources close to the player as well, and I want to say they really reiterated that Harvey Elliott absolutely loves Liverpool. I mean, he turned down Real Madrid for them, let's not forget that. He's a massive Liverpool fan, so he will do everything he can to make this work and to force himself back into contention. So no real doubts over his future at the moment, I would say, and no question whatsoever that other clubs are monitoring his situation. That is something that happens to every player in the squad, by the way. I want to reiterate that. But, as I say, no doubt as things stand, and I'm pretty sure he's got a big part to play over the remainder of this season, starting hopefully at the weekend against Accrington. So, quite a lot to get into there, really, for the January window, and hopefully more transfer updates to come as well, as we see how this Kvaratskhelia situation kind of plays out. I've probably got to get better at pronouncing his name as well, and he probably need a bit of practice on that. But really looking forward to seeing how this one plays out. Adds a bit of spice to the window, doesn't it? Makes it exciting for all of us. So, yeah, we'll see how this plays out, whether Liverpool will come to the table and start to get into talks with Napoli over the coming days, but hopefully so, because we all love a signing, don't we? Now, I'll wrap it up there, and of course, I will be back tomorrow at Anfield, where I think it's going to be absolutely freezing cold, because I'm looking out and there's snow outside. So not looking forward to it from that perspective, being freezing cold, but very much looking forward to what I expect will be a much changed team beginning their FA Cup campaign against Accrington. I'm sure it's going to be a really good day. So if you don't subscribe, do hit that subscribe button to get my post-match review from Anfield. And of course, if you can like the video, really appreciate that. Just reached 25,000 subscribers, which is absolutely blowing my mind. So thank you to all of you. But I'll wrap it up there, and I'll see you at Anfield tomorrow.